All right. Well, I'm going to get us underway here. We'll have others joining us, I think, as we go, but we've had our couple-minute grace period here. Good afternoon and good morning. I'm pretty sure it's unlikely we have any good evenings. But thank you for joining us again. My name is Kyle Shelton. I'm the director of the Center for Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota and the principal investigator for the Mobility, Access, and Transportation Insecurity program. You are here for the round 2 program information and RFP listening session. We're going to go through a range of topics here today. I'm going to overview what the MADI program is, what this round 2 program is, and give you some more information about the timeline for the RFP and the actual work that would take place after those communities that apply or teams that apply are selected. And then importantly, this is also a listening session opportunity. The MADI program team has been able to draw expertise from our research committee, which is made up of a number of folks from across the country who have shared some information and shared ideas with us about how to shape this program. And we also want to make sure that you all as members of the public and stakeholders in this opportunity have a chance to shape some of what might appear in the RFP. So feedback from today is definitely going to be taken under consideration as it was in round 1 and help shape some of the elements that we included in the final RFP. So appreciate you coming here to gain some of the information and hopefully share some of your thoughts about this round as well. Beth, do you just want to say hi and introduce yourself before I jump in as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Andrews. I am the Research Administration Manager at the Center for Transportation Studies and also the Program Manager for MADI.
Thank you, Beth. And just a couple of housekeeping things. You should be able, please just use the chat. Everyone should have access to that if you have a question, or once we get to the part where I'm asking for direct input, Beth will be coordinating sort of the answers to this question. Now we're moving to the next one, but go ahead and just use the chat at any point here. I'm going to try, if you see me looking down, because I'm making sure I'm keeping an eye on the chat as well. And we will try to answer questions as we go along here. I will stop in between sort of the info section and the listening session to answer some questions as well. But feel free to drop things in as they occur to you, and I will try to pause and either pause or get to them as I get to the info session endpoint. So again, just a little agenda for today. We'll go through what MADI is. We'll do some of the questions on the program, give you an opportunity for some questions on the program. And then do our listening session for some of the key RFP elements. Before we jump into, or just as a way to remind folks who haven't encountered the program before, or if you didn't attend earlier last year round 1 session, I just want to kind of re-ground us in what we're talking about when we talk about transportation insecurity. And for our purposes, that can mean a lot of things. These are some of the key pieces here. Anything from being unable to reach destinations, missing or not taking trips because of a lack of transportation, similar to food insecurity, maybe not knowing where or how you might move to the places you need to get, or just limiting or missing opportunities because of a lack of resources or an adequate system. So those are broadly how we've been thinking about transportation insecurity. The MADI program, part of why the Federal Transit Administration has funded this program, is to try to understand and identify ways to address that range of transportation insecurity elements, or the ways that people experience transportation insecurity. This is an attempt, the program is an attempt to really solicit ideas and proposals from really interesting groups of team members, to not just think about supporting the interventions themselves, but also trying to track and evaluate how those interventions really do impact the users' lives, the individuals' lives. And so, as we'll talk about more today, this is really a program coming from the research and innovation arm of the FTA, really intended not primarily to do, the ongoing capital investments and other things the FTA does greatly with transit partners, but to really kind of push us all collectively to think about what are some of the approaches we could be taking across transportation ideas, including transit, beyond transit, with intersections of transit, to really first and foremost focus on what are the most impactful possible tools and practices and improvements that can really address that transportation and security need for folks. Again, as I think I've already started to allude to, this is not intended to be limited to traditional transportation approaches or modes. nor even the transportation alone. I'll talk a little bit about some of what the round one cohort members are working on and give you some examples in a second. But we are very interested in thinking about teams that are tying to interconnected issues, tying across sectors, thinking about housing, health, access to opportunity, education. That list is not exhaustive. There are many others there. But again, our hope here is, as we did with round one and as we want to do again with round two, really thinking about what are the impactful ways to weave efforts together, weave sectors together, and address transportation insecurity from multiple angles. As a reminder, round one, we went through a process about a little bit more than a year ago now, to identify this first cohort of 8 communities. Round one focused on communities and jurisdictions of more than 50,000 people, as I'll talk about in a second. Round two is going to be more focused on smaller and rural communities. That's what this next round will really prioritize. But I just wanted to give a snapshot. Beth, if you have an opportunity, maybe you could drop the link to the broader press release about the cohort one communities and what their projects are. But these are the 8 communities that are participating in the current round one. Phase one is where they're at. So each of these 8 communities are developing a plan right now to propose a demonstration that they think would be really impactful at addressing transportation insecurity in their communities. The program for round two, which is what this webinar is for, will mirror this round one pretty closely. So I'll talk more about that in a second. Just to give you a flavor of some of these proposals and which types of populations they're focused on and what they are working towards for their demonstration, a couple that I thought I would highlight would be in Richfield County, Mansfield, Ohio. That group is, as an example, looking at connecting second shift and third shift workers with appropriate transportation and connection. In Chicago, the group led by the University of Illinois Chicago is thinking about how to connect caregivers of all types to opportunities via transportation to make sure that their kiddos can get where they need to be and the caregivers can access jobs and other opportunities effectively, particularly in some of the first-ring suburbs and not just central city of Chicago. And the other 6 recipients in cohort one are doing a range of other really interesting projects. I encourage you to check out the link that Beth dropped in. But as we talk about the potential projects and connections that we're hoping to see in round two, I think the round one cohort, obviously in different settings and larger jurisdictions, but also gives you a bit of a flavor of the type of projects and type of innovative approaches we're going to be looking for. So just at the highest level, you're going to see versions of this several times before I'm done talking, because we really want to try to make it clear how this process is going to work. But what we are talking about today is building towards the release of the RFP for round two. At the highest level, what this is going to look like is in January, we will release the RFP. Our goal for all of this is to enable you all as stakeholders and potential applicants to have the time and space and information you need to really put together a strong proposal. So as I'll talk about it a little bit more, that RFP will have an ample about 4-month window. Obviously, some of the information from today should also be able to help you start having conversations and thinking about maybe what your teams could look like. But the concrete details of the RFP and specific eligibility and stuff will become available in January. I'll go through that timeline in more detail in just a second. But the RFP will come out in January. The MADI program team and only the MADI program team will review and select. After we select that, we'll move into round two, phase one, which is the map you just saw previously is round one, phase one, with the larger urban jurisdictions. The phase one sites here will be selected after this initial RFP. And again, just like what's happening in the current round, those selected in round two will be developing a plan and intervention demonstration. And that is the primary deliverable that you'll turn into the MADI team at the end of phase one. There's going to be a second review just of those sites that are participating in phase one. And from that second review, we'll be selecting a subset of the phase one sites for demonstration funding. And the deliverable in phase two is actually the demonstration, the execution of the work. So a little bit more detail on just this RFP and selection for round one, phase one. The RFP will be released on January 13th of 2025. As we did in the last round, we are going to try to give as much space and opportunity for questions and answers as we can here. There'll be 2 webinars that will delve deeply into the RFP and allow people to ask very specific questions about the elements of the RFP in February. Those are on the 4th and the 12th. We will also hold an office hours, basically, an open time that any interested applicant teams can join us on a call every Thursday. I believe it's at 11 a.m. Central. Trying to find a time that could work for multiple time zones. Never quite anything perfect, but we'll be available for other questions outside of those office hours as well if it's not a time that works for your community or your team. One thing that we will ask everyone to do again is submit a relatively straightforward expression of interest. We did this last time and it worked well. It allowed us to kind of do a quick check on eligibility, make sure people were following the laid out rules in the RFP, and also gave us an opportunity to say to them, hey, as of now, you turned it in, it's not quite arranged correctly. If you want to be able to submit, you may need to tweak X or Y. So that's a great way for us to see both the interest, see if we need to do some more promotion, and also just have a sense of who's thinking about applying. We'll also have a questions deadline where you can reach out to either Beth or I with any questions, and even if it's outside of the office hours, we'll try to get those responded to. And importantly, we will be taking questions that are asked in the webinar, the office hours, and the RFP, or the question submission directly to us. We will be collecting those questions as we did in the last round and making sure they're all publicly posted with their answers. So no one will be missing things. You don't need to come to every office hour. You don't need to come to all the webinars. We will be processing and compiling questions and making sure those questions and answers are posted on the public website. And then finally, the proposal will be due by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on April 30th. So again, a pretty long runway, we hope. And again, it's also not an overly onerous application itself. We're following many of the same steps we followed in round 1. So trying to keep it relatively simple. Just to give a sense of the Maddie team and the roles of applicants and local partners. Obviously, funding comes from the FTA. The program management is directed by the Maddie team, which Beth and I are representing today. There's a co-PI, Professor Yingling Fan from the University of Minnesota Humphrey School of Public Affairs. And then we also have team members from Tool Design and the Center for Neighborhood Technology on the Maddie team column here. FTA is obviously helping with overarching program management and making sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's as needed and supporting us in ways that FTA can as well. But the Maddie team is solely responsible for applicant selection and for this process. As we move past applicant selection, that's when we actually move into the program. So if you enter into the cohort for phase 1, you will be responsible for the plan development, deployment and management, and data collection as you move into phase 1 and phase 2. Throughout all of those pieces, the Maddie team and our group are there to support you and to help you develop those plans and think about how you would do your demonstration and data collection research. That kind of bridges the responsibilities for applicants here, bridge both phase 1 and phase 2. Dr. Fan is responsible in leading the research and evaluation side of things. She will be working with the Maddie team and with local sites in close partnership as we move into the demonstrations in phase 2, collecting data, making sure we're able to evaluate and using our developed research framework to make sure that as the demonstrations happen, we're also able to track what the impacts of those are. And then obviously throughout this process, we're looking for guidance and feedback from you all. That's what one of the purposes of this conversation is. Also from our FTA partners. And then as I mentioned at the beginning, the Maddie Research Committee. That research committee has primarily helped us think about what are the parameters of the program, how should we be thinking about our research framework, and then a subset of them have also helped us directly thinking about the RFP components. Just as a clarification, those members of the committee who have helped with the RFP and the members of the Maddie program team, none of our organizations obviously can also be a part of any applicant proposals. So just to clarify that role as well. So that's about the overall process and how we're going there. Again, this is going to you're going to start to see these a little bit overlapping from what I've said before, but I just want to give an opportunity to explain it a couple times because it is a new and relatively complicated process. But again, the way that we've structured this for both this existing round and for round two, is that in phase one, selected applicants are going to have a pretty good amount of support from the Maddie program team. You all would be leading the proposal and the plan for the demonstration that you're going to submit for consideration for phase two funding. But the Maddie team is there to support you and to help you get that over the finish line. That's what our teams are doing right now with those 8 cohort members, as they are working on their plan development and their community engagement and listening now. And then, as I said briefly a second ago, the Maddie team is also here to evaluate and share the research findings, primarily from the demonstration sites that are going to occur in phase two. So we have developed a research framework that we are continuing to tweak and continuing to get into position to work with the round one sites now as they move towards phase two, and we'll do that same thing with this round two and the sites that participate here. Again, the overall process here for Maddie round two is that there's one round of funding. We have one allocation for this round two, and these 2 competitive steps, right? So this initial RFP that we're talking about today leads to the first cohort, and then there'll be a second competitive process within that first cohort that will select the sites going towards demonstration in this context. As I mentioned, again, round two is just going to be for smaller communities of under 50,000 people and rural communities. We'll talk about that in one of the feedback pieces here. But with the additional funding made available, what we have available for round two is $900,000 to support the round two process. That is smaller than what we were able to do for round one, but that was the funding that's available, and we're really delighted to have the opportunity to do the second round and to focus on the smaller communities. So just the final details will be available in the RFP as we finalize those, and after we have this process today to think about other components here. But generally, the phase one awards will be to multiple sites. Those will be a smaller amount of money from that 900,000, and it's primarily going to be to support staff time from the proposing teams, tasks like community engagement and listening, and then that overall planning effort, right? That phase one award is really there to help you allow you to develop the plan for the demonstrations. And then phase two awards will be a larger amount of money really there to support the actual deployment and demonstration, as well, of course, as the staff time and data collection needs and other ongoing pieces there as well. So again, just another way to look at this, and to just reiterate it one more time, public release of the RFP will be in January. Submissions will be due in April. We'll have the webinars, the office hours, and the opportunity for the Q&As. And then overall timeline here, the hope is that as you all are proposing, submitting proposals at the end of April, our goal, and we were able to hit this in the last round as well, is to review and select in late spring, early summer, and announce the selection for round two phase one members in either late spring or early summer. This is what the overall program timeline will look like for those who are selected into phase one. That is, again, the development delivery of the demonstration plan. We assume that is a 9 to 12 month process. And if we assume a summer 2025 selection, as we're talking about right now for this RFP and the process of contracting, our plan is that the phase one timeline would run from basically the end of summer 2025 until summer 2026. To give you an example from this current round, the selections were made in early June. Contracting went pretty smoothly and ran into August, and most of the cohort started on August 1st and will be ending and submitting their plans by July 30th of 2025. So we're planning on following that same pattern for this round two phase one. So again, the selection in summer 2025 with the program deliverables, phase one deliverables, probably hitting in summer of 2026. That is, again, the primary application for phase two. And again, would only be available to those who are selected in phase one. Those selected in phase one submit that plan. We will go through another review and select the sites moving forward into demonstration. That again would be also happening in late summer into early fall of 2026. And then the phase two execution, which is the demonstration project fully being deployed is a 2-year deployment ideally, and that would be again from sort of summer fall 2026 to summer fall 2028. So the project itself for this round 2 would be wrapping up in summer 2028 if you are moving through all the way to phase 2. With